Good morning. I hope you all have had a wonderful freight conference this year. And as we close out this year's Ohio Conference on Freight, I'm excited to share with you this keynote address from Michael Heelander, co-founder, president, and CEO of Airspace Link. Michael Heelander is responsible for running all facets of his business. Michael has a proven executive management track record and 15 years of experience driving growth in the unmanned aerial systems and geospatial industry. Prior to starting with Airspace Link, Michael was the co-founder of Geometry, where he built an indoor mapping, analytics, and navigation business that was successfully acquired by Actuary Brands, and it's also exchanged on the New York Stock Exchange as I. Michael also served on GIS Inc. management team for 6 years and was recognized as a leader in location technology. GIS Inc. was also successfully acquired by Continental Mapping. Michael has 20 years of experience in spatial technology, 12 years of experience in state and local government, 7 years of experience in aviation, ag, retail, and logistics industry, and 3 years of working with Federal Department of Defense, and currently holds an FAA commercial drone pilot license. So I'm super excited to hear about the technology that he's bringing to the freight and logistics world today. So Michael, please use your talents today to inspire our friends across Ohio and the Midwest about the future of freight and logistics industry here in the Midwest. Take it away.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Let me get my screen shared here. So, wow, that was a really nice intro. I appreciate that. And I have to say, I've been really impressed with this conference. I've been able to join the past couple days and sit through the keynote and several of the sessions. And I'm really amazed at the amount of talk about UAS and the integration of drones and projects and just thinking about it. And it's well thought out and everyone's really educated. So it's interesting because when I put this slide together, I'm like, oh, we're going to have to take from the ground up and give understanding what's happening in the industry. And in some cases, I'm taking notes on some of the leadership and things that you have going down in Ohio. So I'm north of you. I'm headquartered in Detroit, Michigan. And like it was mentioned, I'm the co-founder and president of Airspace Link. And the best way to think about what we do is think of it as Google Maps and the Waze for drones. That's one part of our business. But the difference is the roads don't exist. So today with Google Maps, you have the rules, the regulations, the traffic signs, the pavement markings, the speed limits, and a system in place that you can see and manage. So that is something that we do as well. So we work with the federal government, FAA, and then state and local governments to help build out those rules, regulations, but also a platform to help manage it from a digital infrastructure standpoint, since a lot of it you can't see, to also some physical infrastructure that is needed to support advanced type of operations. So that's what we do, and I'll mention that throughout this keynote. It's not about really what I'm presenting here. It's not about Airspace Link, but it is pieces and parts and examples of how our core purpose as a company is really, it is our core purpose when you come in to work for Airspace Link is, our goal is to safely integrate drones into the national airspace and our communities at scale. So what do we need to do with our expertise coming from the geospatial industry? And like was mentioned, geospatial is big. I actually serve on the Esri, if people use GIS out there. I serve on the Esri Advisory Board. I'm serving a 3-year term and supporting the direction of geospatial technology. I'm also a mentor in several high schools and teaching drones and geospatial technology. As those, we need that pipeline of new type of workers coming into the industry, which is a huge opportunity for all of us and our kids and college students. And even at Airspace Link, we're hiring 20 people over the next 3 months. So we are at a really great tipping point in the industry to start to support the drone industry. So with that, let's dive in a bit on, why am I so excited about the industry? Well, one, I think of it this way: every decade, there seems to be or every few decades, a major inflection point. I think about Vanderbilt in the rail system, Edison in the electrical grid, Eisenhower in the highway system. And we're really at that next inflection point of, we see the drones, we see the capabilities that they have, but one of the biggest missing links is the supporting infrastructure to allow this. Digital and physical surveillance system, communication networks. Those are the tools and the things that are going to be required by the FAA to support advanced operations and keep our skies safe, but also our communities as well. So we're excited to be part of that almost digital infrastructure, a majority of it, to start to integrate these types of operations. I'm going to bring up a few videos as we go here and talk about it. How close are we to being able to integrate? So as transportation planners, and as we look at this, we really need to understand what's needed to safely fly through communities. So there's companies are looking for site selection right now. So we're working with them to figure out the best locations within a community to serve the most amount of people based on the air and ground characteristics, plus the economic impact. So for an example here, there's a site, it's called a nest, is set up. But then there's an authorization process that goes into play. And you need to understand not what's happening in the air all the time. So that's where we work with the FAA, but what's happening on the ground. Where are the best operations? In this case, flying over a field versus a parking lot. And the goal is to have the lowest probability chance of hitting someone on the ground or in the air. And a lot of that comes from what's happening on the ground. So at Airspace Link, we're focused today on 55-pound drones or less and 400 feet and below, which really takes you down to the ground. And a lot of these operators are required to understand what they're flying over. And a lot of that data is housed in the transportation departments. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, how GIS data is really important into your transportation process. So that was Alphabet Wing, but this is something that actually just happened last week, and it was great to hear about the Smart Mobility Corridor because our team was down there. We had 3 people down there for a multimodal organ delivery, and this was pretty neat because a lot of the companies were from Ohio, and we came down to support the safety cases and the safety system and the communication with the airports for advisories and authorization process. So Vertex is a multimodal software technology that helps get things like an organ from location to location. And I learned a lot as well. And one of the things is that organs lose for every 10 minutes it's out of the body, it loses 1 year. So as it travels, you hit traffic. Every 10 minutes it's so many years. So I was thinking, well, geez. If I ever have to have an organ transplant, I'm going to ask, well, how long did you get here? Because how many years you knock off of it. So some stats in there. So timing is a big deal, and that multimodal process was tested. Now this isn't public yet. It is starting to leak out. I think there was some social media, but there will be some press later next week. But it's neat because and I'll take you through it. Is the organ was harvested. It was brought to Workhorse, which is a publicly traded company out of Ohio as well. It's a UPS-style truck with a drone built into the roof of it. It was transported to that truck. It's an electric truck, I think, as well. That's Tyler holding it up so you can understand the size of it. It's a pretty decent-sized drone. And then I forgot we have some amateur footage since there's a professional company actually filming, but we were able to get a cell phone shot of it as it was getting tested and set up for the delivery process. But it does launch out of the truck, and we'll take a look at that. Well, think of it this way. So it was driven to the location, and if it got stuck in traffic, it could launch the drone. It did launch the drone and then took it to a Moog who was set up, and that's Lisa Peterson from the Airspace Link team as well, supporting that autonomous helicopter, which flew, I think, about 5 miles from that one airport to another. I don't know the exact distance. And it flew autonomously, even though someone was in it. And it landed and went into an autonomous vehicle that drove the last leg of the relay, is what I call it. And this all happened last week. So amazing that we were able to support and be part of a lot of things that are happening in Ohio. And I appreciate a lot of the work that's been going on down there. Only reason I bring this in because Workhorse developed this technology, and this is just another use case where you can see how it's being used. And as we think about freight and small package or last mile delivery, and this is an example of rural package delivery, is being able to drive up, deliver one package, but at the same time launch a drone to maybe drive down 5-mile driveway or a rural location, and then keep driving and delivering packages and allowing that drone to catch up with you. So what inspired us as a company is, well, how's the community going to react? How do you know what you're flying over, where you can land? What's the airspace characteristics? What's the land use? Is there a school, a hospital, jail, critical infrastructure? So we really started to build out these corridors within communities, whether it's urban, rural, to start to create this baseline system. And because we see that a lot of the technology is there, but a lot of the data and process and safety case or real-time safety case generation is difficult to do. And that's where we had kicked in as a company to help support these types of operations. I think I did one more video, and I'm sure you guys have seen quite a few videos today. Maybe this one's not going to play. I just want to show that there's 12 companies right now going through significant type certification. I like this one. This is Bell, just a larger freight delivery. And you're going to start to see there's different types of drones, from Zipline to Alphabet Wing to Bell, that are going to be different types of drones for different types of use cases. So we're going to get into the conversation of the shared infrastructure, where if all these operators are managing their drones, well, how do we communicate and how do we work with communities to be comfortable with these types of operations coming into our communities? Because the hardware is getting certified, and we will see a significant number of companies get their type certification by the FAA this weekend, or sorry, this summer. Some are pretty optimistic in about 6 weeks from now, but anyone that's worked with the FAA knows it will probably be a couple months, and we're managing that as well. So this is what that operation looked like through Ohio. So again, a lot of it's physical and understanding, but we actually had to communicate with air traffic control. We had to do a ground-based risk assessment. On the left side, you can see red is bad, yellow so-so, and in between. And it's figured out based on your operation type. What type of drone? What's the airworthiness? How heavy is it? And it calculates the risk of hitting someone on the ground and the probability of them hurting someone. So the goal of the FAA is a 10 to the negative 7th power probability of injury. And we try to stick to those standards, or we help the drone companies stay within compliance of that airworthiness rating that they're getting. So we are supporting those safety cases through the platform. And then we have the authorization system as well, where we're tied into all the airports locally there. So we're able to communicate our intentions for the flights as well. So industry challenges and the way that we look at it. So a lot of companies have looked at it from the top down. Our background is, we actually have a system out there today, traffic signs. Traffic retroreflectivity is how reflective signs are. We developed a system for that and managing that about 12 years ago, and it's still running up in 16 states now, and I think maybe Ohio. I've lost track. It's still running. It was acquired by 3M at the time, and it was a system for managing how often you need to change signs based on the sign facing type and a bunch of other factors. So we're looking at it the same way. As number one is we started at the lowest denominator. How do just being a recreational pilot and your citizens? How do you know your citizens are flying correctly and safely as a recreational pilot? And then you get into Part 107, commercial flying, which is for business and real estate and movies and photographers. That's its own set of rules and regulations that are pretty complicated at the federal level. And then you start to get into some local issues as well. And then how do you know what you're flying over around the bend? The next area that is we're focused on is that next step up, because that one's being taken care of. But flying beyond visual line of sight is extremely difficult and extremely expensive. And this is where we're looking at the federal government and our Department of Transportation is to start to plan. Is that today the operations you are seeing in these pockets is we're having to bring our own infrastructure. So all of these operators have to bring their own infrastructure and then get it certified by the FAA through the certification process. And then if you want to do advanced operations at scale, imagine saying, "Hey, I want to fly in the state of state of Ohio," and you have to put in your own communications, your own radar systems, surveillance platforms, data analysis, communicate with the locals on site selection and permitting takeoff and landing locations. Even for a small drone, you need a designated area for takeoff in a retail center. So it is difficult, but the main thing here is that it's really about a infrastructure to support that. To bring some people up to speed, and a lot of you may or may not know this, just because I've seen a lot of people that know what they're talking about on this call. But I will take you through the journey where we're at and where we're going. And again, this is our take, and it's not a clear crystal ball exactly where we're going, but we are pretty close to the FAA and several projects in Ohio throughout the U.S. of where it will be. So to describe some of that, we're going back to 2012, 2015. I think the Amazon video probably kicked it into gear. But that's when a lot of drones started to come onto the market, and NASA started their air traffic management testing. And then in 2016, Part 107 ruling came into existence, all the rules and regulations, flying at night, flying at 400 feet. But then you have the ability to get a license. I'm going to tie this back to transportation, where today I have a drone pilot license. I can fly for money. I took tests and I have a license now. And then in 2017, a LAANC, low altitude authorization and notification capability, was developed by the FAA, and they selected a public-private partnership. Airspace Link, we're a LAANC provider. We're one of 5 companies in the U.S. That can provide authorization and integration into airports. I think we're in 729 airports as of last week, integrated. And this is for recreational pilots, Part 107 pilots. And then we actually do further coordination. And that is, I want to fly above 400 feet, or at somewhere that's 300 feet, I want to go to 350 feet. We have a tool that allows you to communicate directly with your air traffic control towers and not have to figure out how to radio them, go to Drone Zone, or fill out a bunch of paperwork. We just give you a direct path through that. The other thing is that registering your drone. I have a drone, I've registered. So now I have, and think of it, now I have a license and a drone that's registered. Starting to sound like the auto industry. We skipped through, we went through IPP, where a lot of testing was done. A lot of data was pulled from that. A lot of that data was then put into a lot of our partners' products and our products. Final ruling on remote ID. Again, another car analogy is remote ID is a license plate. So now I have a license, a registration, and an ID that people can identify who I am. So that was put out 2 months ago. All manufacturers in North America, or actually in the US, have to broadcast the drone model, its location, its heading, all its telemetry to the world. So that if a public safety officer needs to understand who that is, are they authorized, they can pull up the information. So it's really just like, the automotive industry. And so that goes into effect in 14 months. So all manufacturers cannot sell a drone here in the US unless it has a broadcast capability or have embedded an add-on to it. So so to give you some insights of where that's going. Now we've just moved in what's called the Beyond program. This just kicked off a couple months ago. This is for the next 2 years, the FAA, and we're on 3 teams throughout the U.S. to integrate drones beyond visual line of sight. And this is very exciting because this is kind of feel like the finish line. 2021 is we feel like it will be an interesting year. And the reason for that is a couple things. One is, and we get to the next year, is the type certification. In 2021, there are 12 companies going through this, certifying the drones with the FAA. It's flying tons of hours, reviewing the safety systems. All of that is being approved right now, or at least as many companies as they can. Once those drones get their type certification based on their use type or CONOPS, whether it be medical delivery or agriculture usage, they will have a safety rating, and they will be prepared to fly beyond visual line of sight here in the U.S. But again, we're missing that shared infrastructure. And what we're seeing with the Beyond program and groups like, it sounds like Ohio has some radar systems, but in North Dakota, we're on a $28 million digital or infrastructure deployment today. We're about 8 months into the project, and we're setting up an entire physical and digital infrastructure for the entire state, so that you can come, bring your certified drone, connect to the infrastructure in the system, and fly beyond visual line of sight, fly your pipeline systems, inspect highways. Emergency management is looking to leverage the platform this summer. So the infrastructure will actually potentially, our goal by the end of the summer is to get it certified by the FAA. So now you have certified infrastructure and certified drones coming together, working closely with the Department of Transportation to then scale. And that is what we're seeing happen this summer. So a lot of things coming together. I'm not going to hit all these stats, just real quick. There's, just so you know, the amount of drones from recreational on up, there are 8.5 million here in the US and 250 million globally. So there's already a lot of drones out there. And there's already 1.7 million drones registered with the FAA. And just so you have to pay to register your drone, just like you do a car. So I'm impressed that many people actually registered their drone and paid for that capability. So I'm just, and I think, 1.2 million drones were sold in 2020. So there's some big numbers coming on board here. So what are the benefits? Why would transportation look at this? Well, it's kind of like scooters. The scooters just showed up, and lots of benefits, but a lot of headaches as well. But some of the main opportunities here, and we focus a bit more on smaller drones because AAM, or Advanced Air Mobility, it's coming, and we'll work on that. But right now we have an initiative with the FAA to figure this out this year, and with all our companies and investors as well, is to work through this. But there's some really great benefits to just smaller drones, whether it be for saving lives. We just talked about organ delivery. It's really a new type of mobility. I think in Columbus, Ohio, we looked at, there's roughly just over half the population could be served by drones and package delivery. Significant amount of savings per year once this is fully operational for that 53%. Another thing we're looking at up here in Detroit as well is that we're seeing that roughly in a million, I think a million people would, out of that, 22,000 people would be able to receive prescriptions and medical to underserved areas. So, so there's a lot of capabilities, and people are in rural areas or in cities as well. So you have traffic stats, CO2 emissions is another big deal. So really starting to work in the transportation model, this new type of mobility, and kind of look at, if we get this up and running, do we need to add that extra lane to the highway? Is this really viable? And it's a complementary technology. It's not going to take over any type of delivery. It's going to be a complementary delivery based on certain criteria, location, and weight. So the challenges as well is for our communities, building the infrastructure, maintaining the infrastructure, enforcing it. The policies and regulations are coming together, but they're a little bit choppy. And one of our goals as a company is trying to keep from this patchwork. So we are taking things that we're learning up in North Dakota, up in Michigan, Arizona, California. We're in 20 states right now, and starting to make sure that they don't get too far off the rails in the directions that they're heading. So when we look at the airspace where we're going, again, the FAA is number one. They They are running the ship, but at the same time, they do love support. And so when I think about this, it's almost like the FAA supersedes everyone else, but it's almost like we're building the highways, the federal highways. And then what we're doing is we're pulling in the tools to work with transportation groups and cities even. We have, I think, 45 cities in our platform today that are supporting data that's required to build out safety cases through their community. And just to give you a sense that cities are closest to ground, they know what's happening on the ground. They know where the helipads are, or the schools, the hospitals, the jails, the land use, the street center lines, the speed limits. All of that data is actually required. When you create a flight plan, now based on how low we're flying, it's asking, FAA is asking for, well, what's the number of people you're flying over? How many lanes are you flying over? What's the speed limits of the lanes? What's the traffic count? So we had to find a way that planners could build and publish that data into the platform so that then operators could use it. We did work with ESRI, ESRI, I'd mentioned before. 93% of transportation groups already use their products. So we built a plugin to their platform, and they are now pushing it through their system so that transportation planners don't have to learn a new product. It just plugs in, and they're able to push that out. We did work with NASA, and we are partner with ASTM. We took the MITRE models and JARIS, and we put it into a model. As these characteristics are coming together, the best locations to fly based on the operating or the ConOps, the system will adjust for it. So we do have a model in place today. And if there's any adjustments to it with regulations, it will automatically update. So think about this as now we have the federal roads, the state roads, and maybe some cities and counties supporting, and they all roll up together to start to build these highways in the sky that is then served to the drone industry. All the way today, we have recreational Part 107s to advanced operators using the platform to authorize flights, build safety cases, and actually being used by multiple private companies to do site selection. What cities are the best locations to deploy in Ohio based on the characteristics of the demographics and the characteristics of the rail system? So rail systems are starting to become those arteries for noise and for safe flights, because of a drone at that size coming down on a rail system, or hitting a train, it's not probably going to do any damage, especially that first drone you saw. It was 10 pounds, can carry 4 pounds, the Alphabet wing, and it's mostly made out of styrofoam. So some pretty interesting ways to fly. So it is a partnership between everyone. So the FAA, we're required as a company to share every flight and authorize it with the FAA. That data is then also, we share the data from the FAA down to the pilots as well through different sources. And then we share the data exchange with the FAA, with the local governments and Department of Transportation as well, to understand the airspace characteristics as they change in real time as well. So there's a big flywheel of data sharing within this platform for helping build out your corridors and supporting safety cases. So I did this morning, I decided to pull up Ohio in our platform, and only government officials have access to this. So there's only so much data I can show, but you can log into what's called AirHub for Government. And I can see that there was 36 pilots that were approved for 59 flights in Ohio. And you can see that's ramping up. But just to give you the sense of how many flights are being approved, we had 42,000 flights approved last month. That's 42,000 people going in and telling them where you want to fly and then pushing it out to the FAA. So there's more than that, creating flights that don't need to be approved by the FAA. So, and just to give you a breakdown of those people, let's see, 20,000 of them are Part 107 pilots. 19 or 18,000 of those pilots are recreational, just your citizens flying around. And then 3,500 of those flights were what's called further coordination. That is, you can see the numbers on the screen. If they wanted to fly at 400 feet in a 200-foot area, they would type in to the air traffic control tower where they want to fly. So some really neat data that comes back. Like I said, it's a data exchange, but we're sharing it with the stakeholders to support the best operations and safety cases possible. So who's on what side of everything? So we talked about the Beyond program that's going on right now. The land system, transportation, and aviation are really driving a lot of the upper side of our platform. Then we have Department of Transportation groups that are now logging into systems like this to help figure out, well, how do we visualize and manage data, and how do we share it with drone operators and with our communities and with ourselves. And then these are the cities that are actually have moved forward with a lot of this digital infrastructure throughout the U.S. I ran out of logo room, but at least you get an idea of some pretty decent sized communities where they're actually funding projects to support operations like they want, and we will have pockets of deployments, and they're putting in a radar system. Fred Judson said he had the number right, by the way. So these radar systems are expensive. They get up to $500,000, but they're coming down really quick, and we're looking at actually ways to lease them, especially after we get some of the approvals up in North Dakota. Then that data is now shared out, like we showed on the previous slide, and then these are the customers that are using, and we have some amazing operators that now are connecting to the platform, and it's feeding off of that data that's coming from the local governments and the federal government to start to plan operations, site selections, and then build their safety cases. And then we even have air traffic control towers that have now integrated our technology that they are able to start to tie in to their existing radar systems, figure out where they have holes in low altitude radar, and then they're able to integrate some of the radar feeds into their manned aircraft systems and low altitude drone systems as well. So it's really coming together, and we're seeing this in some pockets throughout the U.S. and in Ohio as well. So just to hit a few examples, MDOT here in Michigan, they have been doing a lot on the ground. They have a connected corridor going between Detroit and Ann Arbor. We've been working with some large automotive companies, not to build drones, but they actually want to use them for just-in-time parts delivery along their supply chain. So we're saying, well, how do we leverage a lot of the infrastructure that's going on with these connected corridors? Let's connect to those infrastructure, but make sure that the radar and the communication networks aren't just pointing to the ground, but they're pointing up to 400 feet. So making sure that the infrastructure is going on, much like the connected corridor in Ohio. But that process is going on. But we have customers and drone operators that are saying, all right, we will deliver the packages for you, and you will become a customer. And then the state is saying, well, we'll support the infrastructure. So we are seeing this in multiple states now. It's starting to pick up this ability. This is a logistics company that is approved to do a medical delivery. So this is in Chicago example. Again, if you can see, it's a site selection. It's figuring out how do we route through these communities with the type of drone that we have, and what is the probability of injury along the way. So our system is building out those roads. It's scoring them, and then it's data that they use to figure out. So as a transportation group, you can sit across the table from an Amazon or a Kroger, and you can show them the data, and they can use it to start to figure out the best locations. And that's going on throughout the entire U.S. right now with this system. I think we're doing 200 cities by one group right now. And the better your data is, and the more you work with it, the easier it is to get some of these operators in. And to the point where some of the customers are starting to use the system to figure out, well, here's our locations for dropping off. Are there corridors to get to those locations? In some cases, it's pretty tough. And in some, we actually are recommending them change the warehouse location. And these are this example is for what's called hot shots. We need something super quick along the supply chain. And the actual storage unit is all the way to the bottom left. It's almost 2 miles away, where they're looking at maybe moving this. just for these hot shots. And these are packages that are under 10 pounds that need to get to a location within basically as quickly as possible. Again, another example, Ontario, California, where a city has just moved ahead. They manage the airport as well, so that was great. The really neat thing here is that the developer is involved. So they're building out 59,000 more homes in this community here. And the developer is turning it into a drone-friendly community. So we have the city involved, the airport, and then our system is in place making recommendations on how to build the community to be as safe as possible. So they're starting with this summer will be the retail center. There'll be a takeoff location that's permitted there. And then they'll have several locations for landing within the community. Not to every house. This is a crawl, walk, run, but the ability to start to have a common location to have these drop-offs. And I saw some presentations with ground-based drones. So they have ground-based drones actually already launched here. So we might be launching and landing and then going to a ground-based drone as well. So this another small package multimodal deployment that is starting to kick off there. And the neat part is they're promoting it on their website when you come to buy a house. These types of drones will be available, and we will see them starting to be built into the house. So the developer is looking at building landing locations after this summer. I can't say enough about North Dakota. They have really invested heavily into this network, and we just showed an example here of how transportation planners are using the system now to fly beyond visual line of sight this summer to do road inspections. So it's pretty neat to see that and some public safety use cases. Detroit as well, up north of here, golf course delivery with a group is planned for the summer. So they will be delivering in the Aerotropolis region around the airport packages, food to the 16th and 5th hole as well. So this is some of the system and the authorizations that have gone out. And yeah, just some, they're investing heavily into this technology and within the transportation group. And that is it. I figure that was a whirlwind tour of what's happening in the drone industry. And I tried to pull examples that are happening live or today. So it's not made up. And some of these are one-offs. And then some that you're seeing there are permanent deployments that are happening that will be fully functional imminently in North Dakota and in Ontario because they're investing in the infrastructure. I'll stop sharing and I can take questions as well. I'm not sure if any questions came through.
All right, are we taking any questions, Amanda?
Or not?
Yeah, we don't have any questions at this time. But we do have contact information for Michael and his company. If that is something that you are interested in learning a little bit more about, I'm just making sure we're getting the logo there. So that was very insightful. Thank you, Michael Helander and Airspace Link, for sharing this great message with our partners here in the state of Ohio and the Midwest. I want to thank all the speakers and panelists that have been fantastic this entire Freight Conference. On behalf of my entire team at Morpsey and our Executive Director, William Murdoch, and our many colleagues across the state at the Ohio Association of Regional Councils, I want to thank everyone who participated in the 2020 Ohio Conference on Freight. We're especially grateful, once again, to our sponsors, not only OARC, but also ODOT and Jobs Ohio. Thank you all so much, because this was a very different year for us. We appreciate you still working with us to make this happen, and we are looking forward to seeing everyone's face in person next time we do this. So every year this Freight Conference marks a great opportunity for those of us involved with freight and logistics to come together, network, hear guest speakers, and ask questions. As you reflect on what you've heard and what you've learned, I challenge you to take this information back to your communities and help advance the work we are doing to enhance our transportation system in this state and across the Midwest. To make it more accessible, efficient, and inclusive, so to serve everyone across the state. And most importantly, thank you all for attending and participating this year's conference. We look forward to seeing you again in the near future in person, and hopefully it will be, as I said, in person, but until then, let's all stay safe and be well.